My name is Eleanor Davis. I'm 76 years old. A retired nurse, a widow, and a mother of two. I gave my entire life to raising my boys after my husband died of a heart attack when they were still teenagers. There were nights I went to bed hungry so they could eat. Days I walked through snow just to clock in for a double shift. Just so we wouldn't lose our home. I've always been proud to be a mother. That was the title I wore like a badge of honor. Until this Mother's Day, when my son ripped it off me like it never mattered. I had just gotten home from lunch, if you could call it that. A quiet meal in a noisy restaurant where my son Jason barely made eye contact, spending more time texting than talking. Still, I smiled through it, grateful he remembered me at all. As I sat on my recliner later that evening, I decided to scroll through social media. Maybe he had posted something sweet. Maybe a selfie of us from earlier. I tapped on his profile with hopeful eyes. And there it was. A photo of Jason grinning beside his stepmother, Angela, the woman who had married my ex-husband after we divorced. They were in front of a lavish brunch table. Jason wore a crisp suit, his arm lovingly around her shoulder. Angela looked radiant in a floral dress and pearls. But it was the caption that stabbed me right in the chest. Lunch with the one who's been there for me since day one. My real mother. Happy Mother's Day. I stared at the screen. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. My hand trembled. The pain wasn't just emotional, it was physical. I clutched my chest, breath hitching as if someone had struck me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask him why. But all I could do was sit there, watching as the likes and heart emojis rolled in like bullets. My phone buzzed. A comment from one of his college friends. You always said your stepmom was the best. She raised you right. I dropped the phone. And that's when I realized. Jason hadn't invited me to lunch out of love. He'd invited me out of guilt. Or worse, pity. But why? What had I done to deserve being erased like that? I stood up, knees aching, heart heavier than it had ever been. And then I remembered something. Something from a few months ago. Something that might explain why Jason was suddenly rewriting our history. Something that could shatter what's left of me. But you need to understand how we got here. Let me take you back to the beginning, when my son still called me Mama with pride, when I still believed love was enough to bind a family. Because back then, I had no idea I'd one day be the stranger in my own story. And what you're about to hear is how it all fell apart. Please like, comment, and subscribe if this story breaks your heart like it broke mine, because the worst is yet to come. I met my husband, Paul Davis, when I was just 21. We married within a year, back when love felt enough to carry you through any storm. Paul was charming, ambitious, and quick with a laugh, and I loved him fiercely, until he left me after nearly 2 decades of marriage. I was 43 when the papers came in. He'd met someone else. Her name was Angela. I remember standing at the kitchen sink the night he told me he was leaving. Jason was just 15. His younger brother, Matthew, was 12. Paul didn't even look me in the eye as he packed his suitcase. He said Angela understood him better. That she was younger, more exciting. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I simply nodded, waited until the boys had gone to sleep, then let myself cry in the pantry with the door closed, muffling my sobs with a dish towel. Would they hate me? Would they blame me? Would they forget? That's what I feared most, being forgotten. But I stayed strong. I kept my job at the hospital and worked double shifts while putting both boys through high school. When Jason got into college, I sold my jewelry, my wedding ring included, to help cover his books and tuition when his father refused to pay a cent more than required. I never told Jason that. I wanted him to focus on his studies, not my sacrifices. Looking back, maybe I should have said something. Maybe I should have reminded him of all I gave. But back then, I believed mothers didn't need applause, they just needed their children to be okay. Jason was always a quiet child. Polite, studious, affectionate in the way that made me think we'd always be close. After Paul left, he stopped calling him Dad and refused to visit on weekends. Least at first. Gave me hope. I thought it meant he saw what his father had done. I thought it meant loyalty. But something changed when Jason turned 20. He started visiting his father again. He came home talking about Angela's amazing cooking and how fun she was. Stung, but I smiled. I didn't want to be the bitter ex-wife. I didn't want to ruin his chances of healing. Then Angela started showing up at our family events. Jason brought her to his graduation. Not Paul, just her. She wore a white linen suit and bright red lipstick and clung to Jason like a proud stage mom. I stayed quiet. Took my photos on the sidelines. That night, he posted a photo on Facebook of just him and Angela with the caption, "My support system." No mention of me. It wasn't the first time he left me out. But I told myself maybe it was just an oversight. Even Matthew, who'd once been my little shadow, started drifting. He moved to Oregon, rarely called, and when he did, it was just to say hi, check a box, then hang up. He never asked how I was coping. If the bills were being paid. If I needed anything. By the time I retired, I was living alone in a modest apartment, my knees giving out, my hands aching from years of caregiving, my heart slowly hollowing out. But I still made Mother's Day cards for myself, just in case someone forgot. I'd stick one on the fridge and pretend it came from one of them. And then last month, Jason invited me to lunch. He said, "You free on Mother's Day, Ma?" I was so shocked I almost dropped the phone. My voice shook when I answered yes. That day, I wore my best dress, the navy one with the pearl buttons. I curled my thinning gray hair and even dabbed on some lipstick. I told myself it would be just like old times. But when we got to the restaurant, it felt off. Jason barely looked at me. His phone kept buzzing, and he'd excuse himself to take calls. The waiter asked if we were celebrating anything special, and Jason muttered, "Not really." I blinked, wondering if I'd misheard. Still, I smiled and ordered soup. I paid the tip, even though Jason said he would, then forgot. I thought maybe he was distracted. Maybe work was stressing him out. But when I got home and saw that photo, that caption, "My real mother," my heart split open. And just as I tried to piece it back together, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Matthew. "Hey Mom," he said casually. "Did you see Jason's post?" I wanted to lie. Pretend I hadn't. But before I could answer, he whispered something that froze my blood. "Angela's planning something big. Something about your house. I think you should check your mailbox." Mailbox. I rushed outside, slippers flapping, and pulled the lid open. Inside was a letter. One I never expected. One that made me realize this wasn't just about a photo. It was a plot. And I might lose everything. To find out what was in that letter and what they're hiding from me. Stay with me. This story is only beginning. Like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. My hands trembled as I held the envelope, its paper unusually thick, the kind that didn't carry birthday wishes or warm notes. I could feel something shifting inside me, something that had been quiet for too long. I slid my finger under the flap and pulled out the folded document. My breath caught in my throat. It was from a legal office I didn't recognize. But what it said was clear. Notice of property transfer intent. My name was printed in bold across the top, followed by a line that made my knees buckle. Intent to transfer deed ownership upon legal verification of incompetency or voluntary surrender. Incompetency. I gripped the porch railing to steady myself. What was this? Some mistake. Then my eyes caught a line in fine print at the bottom. Filed by Jason Davis and Angela Davis. They had filed paperwork to take my apartment. The only place I had left in this world. The one I paid for with every aching muscle, every missed birthday, every night shift I worked while Jason slept in his warm bed. I slumped into the porch chair, the paper still clutched in my hands. This wasn't just a photo caption or a careless slight. This was a calculated betrayal. Jason didn't just want to erase me from his life. He wanted to erase me from my home. But why now? Why suddenly? I closed my eyes and let the wind brush against my face as my mind raced backward. 6 months ago, Jason had come to visit. Unannounced. It was the first time in over a year. He brought Angela. She walked through my home like she owned it, commenting on the potential of the living room and asking questions like, "You still live here alone? And is this place under your name or your husband's old will?" I didn't think much of it then. I should have. A few weeks later, Jason offered to help handle my paperwork. He asked for access to my medical records, saying he wanted to make sure I was taken care of if anything ever happened. I told him I appreciated the concern, but I was still of sound mind and had managed this long on my own. His smile back then didn't reach his eyes. And now, holding this letter, I saw the truth. They weren't worried about me. They were planning to take from me. Matthew's voice echoed in my mind. Angela's planning something big. I didn't know how deep this betrayal ran yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to sit back and let it happen. I folded the letter, walked back inside, and opened my old cedar chest. It still smelled faintly of lavender. Inside were my records. Everything from my husband's old will, my property deed, my nursing certifications, even a notarized statement I'd made years ago when I refinanced after Paul left. I'd be damned if I let someone steal what little I had left. But I needed help. Legal help. So I called the only person I trusted outside my sons. Her name was Lorraine. She was my old friend from church, once a paralegal, now a retired widow who spent her days feeding stray cats and reading mystery novels. I hadn't spoken to her in months. Shame had kept me away. But when she picked up the phone and heard the panic in my voice, she came running. She arrived in 20 minutes, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and holding a yellow notepad. "Start from the beginning," she said, taking off her sunglasses. "Tell me everything." I did. I told her about the lunch, the photo, the caption, the letter, and what Matthew had said. She didn't blink once. When I finished, she looked me dead in the eye. "Eleanor," she said, "they're trying to build a case that you're not mentally competent. That's why the lunch felt off. Jason was likely recording everything. They'll use it to prove you're confused or forgetful. This isn't just mean. It's criminal." Felt sick. "They can't do this to me," I whispered. Lorraine leaned forward. "Only if you let them." She took my paperwork, flipped through each document, then nodded with satisfaction. "You've got enough here to fight back," she said. "But we need to move fast." She gave me a list. "Call a lawyer, document your day-to-day functioning, and, most importantly, don't talk to Jason or Angela until we know more." Then she looked at me with steel in her eyes. "You gave them life, Eleanor. Now you have to fight for yours." For the first time in a long time, I felt a fire return to my chest. Not the ache of heartbreak, but the warmth of defiance. I wasn't going down without a fight. But just as Lorraine was leaving, she stopped at the door and turned back. "There's something else you should know," she said. "What is it?" She hesitated. "Jason didn't come up with this on his own." I furrowed my brow. "What do you mean?" She sighed. "I heard Angela used to work in a legal office. Older law. She knows the system. And there's a rumor that she's done this before." Before I could ask what that meant, Lorraine's phone buzzed. She looked at it, and her face turned pale. Then she handed me the screen. A message from one of her old colleagues. Just 6 chilling words. "Jason filed a guardianship request today. He was trying to have me declared mentally unfit. And he might succeed. If I didn't act fast. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you believe no mother deserves to be erased." Next chapter will reveal how far my son will go, and what he's willing to lie about to make it happen. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by my window, watching the streetlights cast shadows on the pavement as my mind spiraled. How could Jason, my own flesh and blood, stand before a judge and try to strip me of my independence? How could he paint me as unstable when I was the one who held him through fevers, taught him to tie his shoes, and saved every report card with pride? I opened my worn photo album, brown leather peeling at the corners, pages yellowed with time. There was Jason's kindergarten photo, his gap-toothed grin beaming at me. There was the note he scribbled when he was 10. "You're the best mom ever." I traced the letters with my finger, then closed the book. Something inside me broke. But not in the way they wanted. It was the kind of break that makes room for rage to rise. For clarity. For fight. Lorraine returned the next morning with coffee, legal pads, and a list of elder law attorneys who offered emergency consultations. "You're going to get ahead of this," she said. "You have to. Because if Jason files for guardianship and they win, you'll lose everything." I called the first name on the list. Mara Fenton, a sharp-tongued, no-nonsense attorney known for defending seniors from financial abuse. She agreed to meet me that same afternoon. Her office was sleek, her tone brisk. "Let me be clear, Mrs. Davis," she said, tapping her pen against her desk. "This isn't just a family squabble. This is legal warfare. If your son succeeds in proving you're unfit, he will have full control over your finances, your medical decisions, and yes, your property. That house will be his to sell, rent, or burn." I swallowed hard. "But I'm not unfit." She met my eyes. "Then we prove it." The next few days became a blur of medical evaluations, documentation, notarized statements from neighbors and friends who saw me live independently every day. Lorraine even convinced Pastor Elkins from church to write a character reference. Meanwhile, Mara discovered something shocking. Angela had done this before. 3 years ago, she befriended an elderly widower in another county, helped him manage his finances, and shortly after was granted power of attorney. Within 6 months, his home had been sold, his car liquidated, and he was moved into a nursing facility. That man died alone. No family claimed his body. Angela wasn't charged, but whispers surrounded her name. And now she had set her sights on me. Mara leaned back in her chair and said, "This is textbook elder exploitation. And your son is the weapon she's using." I felt my chest tighten again. I wanted to believe Jason was being manipulated, that he didn't fully understand the consequences. But then I remembered his eyes that day at lunch. Cold, distant, unapologetic. He knew. He just didn't care. The day of the emergency court hearing came faster than expected. Jason had indeed filed the guardianship request, claiming I was showing signs of memory decline, and had become paranoid and confused. He even submitted a video clip, taken secretly, of me searching for my glasses and repeating a story twice during our lunch. But Lorraine had warned me. And Mara came armed with counterproof. The courtroom was small, the air stiff with tension. Jason sat across from me in a tailored suit, lips pressed into a straight line. He didn't meet my eyes. Angela was beside him, in a beige dress and low heels, looking like a demure angel. I wanted to scream, to stand and shout, "Tell them how you planned this. Tell them how you picked me apart like a vulture waiting for a heartbeat to stop." But Mara placed a calm hand on mine. "We do this by the book," she whispered. The judge, a middle-aged woman with kind but sharp eyes, asked for opening statements. Jason's lawyer began. "Mrs. Davis has recently demonstrated behavior that concerns my client. She's elderly, forgetful, and unfortunately, alone. Mr. Davis only wants what's best for his mother. He believes placing her under guardianship will ensure her safety." Then Mara stood. "With all due respect, Your Honor, what Mr. Davis seeks is control, not care. What he's done is not an act of protection but a well-documented attempt at financial and emotional exploitation. And we have evidence." One by one the testimonies rolled in. My primary care doctor confirmed I was mentally sound. My neighbor described how I walked daily, shopped on my own, paid my bills on time. Lorraine spoke of my independence, my clarity, and even produced the letter Jason sent me 2 months ago, asking if I'd consider adding Angela to my will. The courtroom stirred. Jason squirmed in his seat. Angela's expression cracked. Then Mara delivered the final blow. The records from the previous case in the other county. The one involving Angela and the old man. The judge's brow furrowed. This wasn't disclosed by the petitioner. Mara's voice was ice. "No, Your Honor." And conveniently so. Jason stood suddenly. "She's lying," he snapped. "She's trying to turn everyone against me." His outburst echoed through the room. The judge raised a hand. "Mr. Davis, sit down." He hesitated, then slumped back into his chair. And then silence. The judge took a moment, flipped through the folder, looked directly at me. "Mrs. Davis, do you feel you are being coerced in any way by your son?" I rose, my voice quiet but steady. "Your Honor, I raised that boy alone. I gave him everything I had. But today I feel like I'm looking at a stranger. One who sees me not as a mother, but as a transaction." The judge nodded. And then her ruling came. Guardianship denied. Relief washed over me in waves, but the damage was already done. Jason stormed out of the courtroom. Angela followed behind him, seething. And just as I gathered my purse, ready to go home and breathe again, Mara touched my shoulder. "There's something else," she said gently. "Something we found in Angela's email records, through a subpoena. You need to see it." She handed me a printed message. It was from Angela, sent 2 months ago, to a real estate broker. The subject line read, "Vacancy coming soon. Elderly owner won't be a problem." I stared at it, my hands shaking. So they had planned this long before that Mother's Day photo. They weren't just trying to take my house. They were trying to take my life. Don't go anywhere. Because in the next chapter I finally confront Jason. And what he says shatters everything I thought I knew. If you're still here, please like, comment and subscribe. Because no one deserves to be erased like this. I sat in silence in the back seat of Lorraine's car as we drove home. The courthouse faded behind us, but the pain stayed lodged in my chest like a stone. I should have been relieved. After all, the judge had ruled in my favor. I had won. But it didn't feel like a victory. Because I hadn't just lost trust. I had lost my son. The betrayal wasn't abstract anymore. It wasn't just a bad caption or a photo posted out of thoughtlessness. No, Jason had filed paperwork, gathered lies, and stood before a judge ready to strip away my rights. My own child had tried to put a legal muzzle over my life. And Angela, she had planned it all like a business move. That email was proof. Vacancy coming soon. Elderly owner won't be a problem. Those words danced in my head over and over. Cold. Calculated. Cruel. As we pulled up to my apartment, Lorraine turned off the ignition and looked at me. "You don't have to be strong right now," she said. I turned to her, and for the first time in days I let go. Tears rolled freely down my cheeks, warm and bitter. I cried not just for what Jason had done, but for what I had lost long ago without realizing it. The son I thought I knew. The next morning I woke up with a different kind of ache, one born of determination. I couldn't rest yet. Jason still had access to information about my finances. Angela still knew too much. And if they'd tried once, they'd try again. I needed to cut the cord completely. Mara had already sent documents to revoke Jason's power of attorney and put every legal boundary in place. But emotionally, that was a whole other battle. So I made the decision to do what I never imagined I'd have to do. Called him. The phone rang 3 times before he picked up. "Hello. Jason, it's Mom." Silence. Then a sigh. "I'm kind of in the middle of something." "I won't take long," I said. "I just want to understand why." Then he said coldly. "Why what? Why you did all of this? Why you tried to take everything from me? What did I ever do to deserve this, Jason?" His voice lowered, tight with frustration. "It's not about what you did. It's about what Angela's done for me. She was there when Dad walked out. She supported me through college. She helped me get my first job." Blinked. "I sold my wedding ring to pay for your books, Jason. I made you lunches with coins I dug out of couch cushions. I stayed up every night waiting for you to come home safe." He scoffed. "That was a long time ago. You've always been stuck in the past, Mom. Living in that dusty little apartment like a victim. Angela showed me how to plan for the future. She taught me how to protect what matters." "And what is that exactly?" "Yes. My home. My dignity. Is that what matters now?" He didn't answer. So I asked the question that had haunted me most. Do you even love me, Jason? His silence was deafening. When he finally spoke, his voice was clipped. I have to go. And just like that he hung up. I stood frozen, phone still pressed to my ear, the dial tone echoing in my bones. But in that moment something inside me changed. I realized that I couldn't fight for someone who didn't want to be fought for. I had to fight for myself. The next few weeks were hard. I updated all my records, restructured my will, and removed Jason's name from every document he was once attached to. I donated the photo albums. I replaced the framed pictures on the mantel with artwork I'd always wanted but never thought I deserved. And then I did something that surprised even me. I reached out to Matthew. He had been distant over the years, yes, but something about his warning that day, his concern in his voice, told me maybe he hadn't drifted as far as I thought. He answered after 2 rings. Mom. His voice cracked just saying it. Hi, sweetheart, I said softly. Can we talk? He flew in the next day. We met at a small diner downtown. The second he saw me, he hugged me, tight, long, like a son who finally realized time was running out. I'm sorry, he whispered into my shoulder. I should have been around more. I didn't know how bad things had gotten. I pulled back, tears welling up again. You called that day. You told me to check the mailbox. You might have saved me. Matthew ordered coffee and began explaining what he'd seen. How Angela had been pushing Jason, feeding him ideas, turning him bitter. But Jason chose to go along with it. He's not the same, Matthew said. She's got some kind of hold on him. But I never stopped loving you, Mom. I swear. For the first time in what felt like forever, I exhaled. Maybe I hadn't lost both of them. Maybe I still had one son who remembered the woman who raised him. But even as I held on to that hope, something else was brewing beneath the surface. Because Matthew leaned in and said, There's something else you need to know. What is it? Yes. He hesitated. Angela's pregnant. Blinked stunned. She's carrying Dad's baby. My jaw dropped. My ex-husband's baby. Jason's half-sibling. She's planning to put the baby's name on everything, Matthew continued. Including Dad's estate. But that's not even the worst part. I swallowed. What could be worse than that? He leaned in closer. She wants to move into your apartment. Jason told me she's already designing the nursery. My blood ran cold. They weren't done with me. Not by a long shot. Stick with me. Because in the next chapter, I find out Angela has one final move planned. And if I don't act quickly, I could lose everything all over again. If this story is breaking your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe. Because no mother deserves to be replaced. Or erased. The moment Matthew said those words, she wants to move into your apartment. A cold numbness spread through my limbs. I felt like I was sitting in a dream, watching someone else's life unravel. But no, this was mine. Angela. The woman who tore my marriage apart. Who smiled in my face while plotting behind my back. Who convinced my son to betray me. Now wanted to sleep under the very roof I'd worked my entire life to keep. She wanted to nest where I had built my memories. To erase every photo, every stain on the wall, every echo of my laughter, and replace it with her own. I looked at Matthew. When? He hesitated, then said, In 3 weeks. 3 weeks. She had already spoken to a contractor to repaint the living room. She was bringing in new furniture. She told friends she was downsizing into a cozy little flat owned by family. Family. She wasn't family. She was the storm that shattered mine. And she wasn't going to take my home without a fight. Lorraine came over that same evening after I called her in a panic. She read the message from Matthew twice, then paced my living room with her arms crossed. She's moving fast, she said. She thinks you're weak. I stared at the floor. Maybe I was. I let Jason push me around for too long. No, she snapped, turning to face me. You were a mother. You loved him. That's not weakness, Eleanor. But now you have to protect yourself. I nodded slowly. So what do we do? She grinned. And it reminded me of the woman who used to win every church raffle because she always had a plan. We do exactly what they don't expect. Lorraine called Mara. Together, they created what they called a counteroffensive. It began with filing an official trespass restriction on my property, legally notifying Jason and Angela that neither had permission to enter or make changes to the unit without my written consent. Then they drafted a new will, airtight, ironclad, and excluding Jason entirely. But Lorraine wasn't done. "We need to show them you're not going anywhere," she said, tapping the table with purpose. "We go public." I raised a brow. "Public? Social media," she said. "We put your story out there. A mother betrayed. A woman nearly robbed of her life by the very people she gave it to. You think Angela's been bragging online? Let's see how she likes the truth going viral." First I hesitated. I wasn't the kind to broadcast pain. I came from the generation that suffered quietly, that smiled through tears. But Lorraine had a point. Jason and Angela were using silence as their weapon. So I wrote it. A letter from a mother. I posted it to my Facebook page, with a photo of me in my nursing scrubs from back when I worked 12-hour shifts to keep the roof over our heads. It read, "My name is Eleanor Davis. I'm 76 years old. This Mother's Day my son invited me to lunch." Then he posted a photo with his stepmother, calling her his real mother. A week later I received a legal letter. He and that woman had filed paperwork to take my home. The home I paid for. The home I built. They said I was unfit. They said I was confused. I am neither. I am heartbroken. And I am not staying silent anymore. Within 24 hours it had over 12,000 shares. Comments poured in. "You are a warrior, ma'am. Sending love from Texas. Keep fighting." I showed this to my mom and we cried together. Then came something none of us expected. A local journalist reached out. Her name was Cassidy. She worked for a popular news channel and wanted to feature my story as part of a series on elder exploitation and family betrayal. First I was nervous. I didn't want to look pitiful. But Cassidy was kind. She let me tell my story in my own words. She even came to the apartment and filmed me sitting in my rocking chair, holding the legal notice in my hands. "People need to know this happens," she said gently. "You're not alone." When the segment aired it went viral overnight. And then the phone rang again. It was Jason. His voice was furious. "What the hell are you doing, Mom?" I didn't flinch. "Telling the truth. You're embarrassing the family." I laughed bitterly. "What family?" "The one that tried to erase me." He paused. "You made your point. Can we at least talk face to face?" I hesitated. Lorraine and Mara were against it. "He'll manipulate you," they warned. "Don't give him a platform." But something told me I needed to hear what he had to say. So I agreed. We met at a park mid-afternoon, where I knew there'd be witnesses around. I wore my church shoes and my favorite brooch. I wanted him to see strength, not softness. He sat on the bench, sunglasses on, jaw clenched. "I didn't want it to go this far," he said. "You filed for guardianship behind my back," I reminded him. "You tried to make me homeless." "I was trying to secure the apartment," he said. "Angela's pregnant. We needed a plan. You live alone. You don't need that much space." My lips curled into a tight line. "So you decided I didn't need my life." He leaned forward. "You weren't supposed to fight back like this. You were just supposed to let it go." I looked him in the eye. "You wanted me to disappear." He said nothing. "Tell me one thing," I asked softly. "When you called her your real mother, did you mean it?" He paused for a long time, then said, "She showed me how to be strong. You just showed me how to survive." It hurt more than any insult could have. Because that was the moment I knew. Jason had never understood me. Never appreciated the blood, sweat, and years I poured into him. He saw me as a shadow. Past. Placeholder. Understood. "That strength you admire in her," said. "I gave that to you. And if you can't see it, Then maybe you were never mine to begin with. I walked away, leaving him speechless on the bench. But I wasn't free yet, because 2 days later, a stranger knocked on my door. She was middle-aged, soft-spoken, and held a manila envelope. "I think we're connected," she said. "I'm Angela's sister." My breath caught in my throat. She looked me in the eyes and whispered, "I need to show you something about Angela. Something I should have said years ago." She handed me the envelope. "Please," she said, backing away. "Don't let her fool you again." Inside, photos, legal papers, proof of a lie so big, it would make everything Jason believed come crashing down. Don't miss the next chapter, because what's in that envelope will destroy the lies Jason built his life on. Like, comment, and subscribe if you believe no mother should ever be forgotten and never underestimated. I sat there at my kitchen table, the envelope trembling in my hands like it carried a ghost. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. Angela's sister, this stranger with kind eyes and guilt in her voice, had left me with nothing but a warning. Don't let her fool you again. With slow fingers I peeled the flap open. The first thing I saw was a photo. Angela, but younger. And with a man who was definitely not my ex-husband. They were arm in arm, standing in front of a courthouse. And then I saw it. A marriage certificate paperclipped to the back of the photo. My eyes scanned the name. Angela Stone. And Leonard Hughes. Married 11 years ago. Angela told Jason she had never been married before Paul. That she had no family. That she had no children. I flipped through the rest. There were custody papers, arrest records, medical files, a psychiatric report from a decade ago. My fingers trembled as I turned each page. Angela had a daughter. She had abandoned that child. And her ex-husband had filed for full custody, citing that Angela had neglected and emotionally manipulated the child in a previous relationship. Angela lost custody. And there was even a restraining order filed by the man's family. And here she was, pregnant again, preparing to raise a baby with Jason. Was this woman using my son the same way she used that poor man before him? I covered my mouth, trying to breathe. Because the worst part wasn't just what Angela had hidden. It was that Jason didn't know any of it. He'd built his trust in her on sand. And now it was crumbling. Called Lorraine first. She showed up within minutes, storming in like a general at war. She skimmed the documents quickly, her eyes wide, her mouth drawn tight. "This is a bombshell," she muttered. "And you need to drop it directly on Jason's front porch." I hesitated. Should I? After everything. Should I even care what he knows anymore? Lorraine placed a hand on mine. "Not for him," she said. "For you. You need him to see the truth. Even if it's the last thing he ever sees from you." He nodded. We arranged a meeting through Mara, who called Jason's lawyer and demanded an emergency sit-down. Jason agreed barely. He still sounded bitter, tired of what he called drama. Angela didn't come this time. I wondered if she was already starting to sense the unraveling. The meeting was held in a private room at the attorney's office. Jason walked in, wearing sunglasses even indoors. When he saw me sitting there with a folder, he scoffed. "This again," he muttered. "Mom, I really don't have time." I slid the photos across the table. His voice died mid-sentence. What is this?" he whispered, lifting the first paper. "Your truth," I said. "The one you never asked for. The one I think you deserve before it's too late." Jason blinked as he scanned the marriage certificate. His face paled at the restraining order. And then he got to the report on Angela's daughter, the one she lost. I watched him crumble, right in front of me. "No," he whispered. "No, she told me. She said she never had a family. She said I was her fresh start." "She lied," I said softly. "And you burned me to make room for her lies." Jason's hands began to shake. He dropped the papers and stood suddenly, pacing the room. "Why wouldn't she tell me?" he snapped. "Why hide all of this?" I didn't answer. Because sometimes silence says more than any word. He turned to me then, tears in his eyes for the first time since this all began. Did she really plan to take the apartment? He asked. Was all of it true? He nodded. The nursery, the contractor, the email. All of it. He sank into the chair like his bones had given up. And then he did something I never expected. He wept. Not angry tears. Not crocodile tears. But shattered tears. I'm sorry, he whispered. God, Mom. I'm so sorry. I didn't rush to comfort him. Not yet. This apology wasn't a cure. It was just the bleeding finally being acknowledged. You hurt me, I said gently. You nearly destroyed me. I know, he said. I don't even know who I am anymore. She twisted everything. She convinced me I owed her everything, and you were just noise. I blinked away tears. That noise raised you, I whispered. That noise bled for you. Jason placed his hand on the folder. What do I do? Shrugged. That's not my battle anymore. He begged me not to go. He asked me to give him time to process, to try to make it right. I said I needed space. Not out of revenge, but because I no longer lived to be his foundation. I walked out of that room with my head held high. But when I got home, something unexpected happened. There was a letter taped to my door. No name on it. Inside was a short note written in elegant script. You think this is over. You're not the only one who knows how to fight dirty. Angela. She knew the truth was out, and she was threatening me. I stared at the note for a long time. Lorraine rushed over again, insisting we report it. Mar agreed. We filed it with the authorities, who promised to investigate. But the pit in my stomach said something else. Angela was not finished. And I had no idea what her next move would be. In the next chapter, Angela shows her teeth. And it becomes a dangerous game of survival. Don't miss what happens when the mask finally slips. Like, comment, and subscribe if you believe truth always finds its way to light. Because this story is about to explode. I didn't sleep the night Angela's note appeared on my door. I sat upright in my recliner with the hallway light on, clutching a kitchen knife in my lap. Not because I expected her to break in, but because I no longer felt safe in my own home. You're not the only one who knows how to fight dirty. Those words looped in my mind like a curse. And the worst part was I believed her. Angela wasn't impulsive. She was calculated, controlled. She didn't scream or slam doors. She smiled while planting grenades. I knew this wouldn't end with a letter. Lorraine stayed the night on my couch, snoring lightly with one eye half open. When the sun rose, she made coffee and said what we both knew had to be done. We need to go public again, she said. Expose the rest. But won't that just provoke her? Yes. She tilted her head. Sweetheart, she's already provoked. The only thing left is to make sure when she swings in front of everyone. That morning, Mara arranged a follow-up interview with the same news station. This time, they aired the full story. The guardianship papers, the restraining order from Angela's past, the abandoned daughter, and the new threatening letter. The segment hit like wildfire. People were outraged. Seniors reached out from all over the country, sharing their own horror stories of children trying to claim power of attorney. The hashtag stand with Eleanor began trending. Cassidy, the reporter, told us it was the highest viewed story they'd ever posted. But just when I thought Angela would go into hiding, she did the exact opposite. She retaliated. That same evening, someone broke into my mailbox and posted doctored medical forms online. Fake dementia evaluations with my name on them. They showed me scribbling incoherently, repeating phrases. Angela's caption on a burner social media account. This woman needs help, not a camera crew. Shame on everyone for exploiting a sick old lady. Comments were vile. She looks confused in that video. Maybe she really is unwell. Why would her son lie? Mara immediately had the post flagged, but the damage spread fast. Rumors reignited. Even Jason, who had begun texting me soft apologies and updates, called in a panic. Did you actually go in for testing? He asked. I did, and you know the results, I said firmly. He sighed. She's making me question everything again. That sentence stung more than it should have. Even now, Angela still had hooks in his skin. I hung up before my tears could surface. Later that week, Lorraine and I met with Cassidy again. This time, Cassidy brought a surprise. Angela's sister, the one who had handed me the envelope. Her name was Elaine. She had come forward publicly, tearfully admitting that she'd stayed silent for years out of fear and shame. But seeing what Angela had done to me, it cracked something in her. Cassidy filmed Elaine's confession, including the custody battle, the manipulation, and how Angela had been doing this to multiple people for years, always targeting elderly individuals through relationships or family ties. And then Elaine dropped a bombshell. Angela wasn't actually pregnant. She had faked the pregnancy. She had lied to Jason to accelerate her plan to take the apartment, knowing he wouldn't question her if a baby was involved. Elaine had found unused prenatal vitamins in her purse, along with discarded documents from a fake ultrasound clinic. When Cassidy aired the episode, the internet erupted. Jason showed up at my door the next morning. No suit, no sunglasses, just swollen eyes and trembling hands. "She lied to me," he whispered, standing on my porch like a child caught in the rain. "The baby, the papers, all of it." I didn't move. He reached for my hand, but I kept it at my side. "Mom, please. You chose her lies over my truth," I said. "And now you want me to clean it up." "I was stupid," he said. "I see that now. I got caught up trying to prove I could take care of something. But I was destroying the one person who ever truly took care of me." I studied his face. For the first time in months, maybe years, I saw my son again. Not the polished man in suits, but the boy who used to cry when he skinned his knee and run to me with open arms. "Open the door. Come inside," I said. But not to be forgiven. To understand. We sat for hours. I told him everything. Every sleepless night. Every broken dream. Every letter, every court date. Every tear I never let him see. And he told me something I never expected. Angela had once asked him to transfer my apartment into her name while I was still alive. "She said you were lonely and would be better off in assisted living," he said. "She even picked one out." My stomach turned. I knew she was ruthless. But to have already scouted my replacement. Jason cried into his hands. And then he asked a question I never imagined he'd ask. "Do you want me to press charges?" Pause. Angela had broken laws, yes. But more than that, she had broken hearts. She had left a trail of shattered people behind her, each one convinced she loved them until she bled them dry. "I don't want revenge," I said quietly. "I want safety. For me. For whoever she targets next." So we gave everything to the DA. Elaine testified. Mara handed over the evidence. Angela was arrested on charges of fraud, elder exploitation, falsifying medical documents, and cyber harassment. Jason testified against her. It was the first time I saw him choose truth over guilt. The judge denied her bail. Angela cried in court, but not the way I had when I was broken. No, she cried because she lost. And in the silence of that courtroom, I finally let go of the fear that had haunted me. Jason turned to me outside the courthouse. "I know I don't deserve your love," he said. "But can I earn back your respect?" I looked at him long and hard. "That depends," I said. "Are you ready to be a son again? Not just when it's convenient, but when it's hard?" He nodded. And then did something that shattered me all over again. He pulled from his pocket a tiny wrinkled card. A Mother's Day card. One I had written to myself years ago, tucked into his childhood box for safekeeping. It read, "If no one remembers me, I still remember me. And I was a good mother." He held it out with both hands. "I remember you now," he whispered. I took it with shaking fingers. And we stood there, mother and son, breathing in a truth that had taken years to come home. If this story touched you, reminded you that even the deepest wounds can heal, please like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, no one gets to define your worth. Not even the ones you gave everything to. Because in the end, your story is still yours. The weeks after Angela's arrest were eerily quiet. No more knocks on my door. No more lawyer letters. No more cryptic threats taped to my walls or whispered rumors snaking through the community. But silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's just space for everything you buried to rise to the surface. Jason started coming by on weekends, not with demands or excuses, but with groceries, repair tools, and sometimes just to sit in the living room while I crocheted and the news hummed softly in the background. He didn't push. He didn't force closeness. He just showed up. That was new. I'd stopped expecting things from him a long time ago. So every small act, mowing the lawn, fixing a broken hinge, asking about my blood pressure, felt like warm sunlight on cold skin. Still, I didn't forget. Forgiveness doesn't come like a sunrise. It comes in flickers. One day he brought a photo album from his attic. It was my old one. The one I thought he'd thrown out years ago, back when he moved in with Paul and Angela full-time. He placed it in my lap without a word. I flipped it open. Jason as a toddler, holding my stethoscope. His fourth-grade science fair project. His braces. His prom. All with me beside him. Not Angela. Me. I looked up and saw tears in his eyes. I think I wanted to erase all of this because it hurt too much to remember how good it was before everything fell apart, he said quietly. But now I see. Forgetting you didn't protect me. It destroyed me. I nodded, unable to speak. Later that night, as I tucked the album beside my bed, I realized something important. Healing isn't about being repaid. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that were stolen and loving them back into place. But peace was short-lived. A letter arrived the next day. New one. Stamped with the logo of Angela's lawyer. Inside was a formal request from Angela's parents. They were seeking legal custody of the unborn child she claimed to be carrying, because now, in an unthinkable twist, Angela was saying that she was pregnant after all, and that she'd faked the records to protect her privacy. Jason nearly collapsed when he read it. "She's lying again," he said, pacing the kitchen. "She has to be." But the lawyer claimed otherwise. A new hospital confirmed her pregnancy. The ultrasound wasn't faked this time. Angela was nearly 4 months along. And if she was telling the truth, that meant Jason was about to become a father. To a child conceived in deception. A child used as a bargaining chip. A child who would enter the world carrying a legacy of manipulation, pain, and silence, unless someone broke the cycle. Jason stood at my window, staring out, shoulders slumped. "I don't even know what to feel anymore," he muttered. And then he asked a question that caught me off guard. "What if I raise the baby?" I turned sharply. "What?" "Not with her," he said. "But with love. With truth. With the kind of mothering you gave me." I studied him for a long time. Could I trust him to do that? Would he fall for another lie? Would this child become another reason for Jason to lose himself? Or would it be the anchor that kept him from drifting ever again? I didn't know the answer. But I did know this. "I won't raise another woman's child," I said. "But if you do it right, if you raise that baby the way you should have stood by me, I'll be here. Not to fix your mess, but to remind you who you are." He nodded, swallowing hard. "That's more than I deserve." That night I sat by my window, watching stars bloom in the sky. I thought about all the women like me. Mothers who gave and gave until there was nothing left but echoes. I thought about the lies we survive. The children we lose. The dignity we fight to reclaim. And then a call came in. From Elaine, Angela's sister. "Eleanor," she said quickly. "Angela's out on bail." My breath caught. "What?" "She used a different lawyer. They filed an appeal. He's out. And she's angry. I overheard her saying something about showing up at your place. One last time." My heart started to pound. "She's not done," I whispered. Elaine's voice shook. "She said if she can't have the apartment, she'll make sure no one else wants it either." Froze. Angela was capable of anything. And now she was free. And coming back. For me. Don't miss the next chapter. The final chapter. Angela returns with nothing left to lose, and I face her one last time. If you believe every woman has the right to defend her peace, like, comment and subscribe. Because this ending, you won't see it coming. The night after Elaine's call was the longest of my life. I locked every door, checked every window twice, and slept with the lights on, if you could even call what I did sleeping. I dozed in fits, startled awake by every creak in the floorboards or gust of wind against the shutters. My heart stayed lodged in my throat like a warning bell waiting to ring. Angela was out. Angela knew where I lived. Angela had nothing left to lose. At dawn, Lorraine arrived with her purse stuffed like a military backpack. Pepper spray, a taser, her church whistle, even a thermos of black coffee like she was preparing for war. "You're not staying here alone," she said, already moving pillows onto the couch. "If she shows up, she's going to meet me first." Jason came an hour later. No suit. No pride. Just jeans, a flannel shirt, and eyes filled with panic. "I'm not leaving your side," he told me, gripping my hand. "I don't care what she says or does. I'm not letting her hurt you again." That afternoon, we reported the threat to the police. Mara forwarded the voicemail Elaine had recorded of Angela's rage. Muttered curses about taking back what's mine and burning it all down if I have to. The officers filed a report but said without a direct action, there wasn't much they could do. So we waited. And when she came, she didn't knock. She kicked the door open. It was just past 9 p.m. when the lock shattered. The door flew open, and Angela stormed into my living room like a hurricane wrapped in lipstick and perfume. Her face was twisted, her eyes bloodshot, her hands shaking with rage. Jason jumped up. "Angela, stop." But she wasn't here for Jason. She was here for me. "You think you're so clever," she spat, stepping closer to where I stood behind the kitchen table. "Turning him against me. Spreading lies. Playing the poor little old lady for sympathy." "I didn't turn him," I said calmly. "You did that yourself." She screamed and swept the lamp from the table. It crashed to the floor, sparking briefly before going dark. Lorraine stood firm in front of me like a wall of steel. "You take one more step," Lorraine said, raising her taser, "and I will light you up like Christmas Eve at the church bazaar." Angela paused, but only for a moment. Then she lunged. But Jason stepped between us and grabbed her. "Enough," he shouted. "It's over, Angela. I saw the documents. I saw what you did. You lied about everything." She thrashed in his arms, sobbing and snarling. "I did it for you. I loved you." Jason held her tightly until the police arrived. Elaine had called them again, this time for real. Angela was arrested on the spot, this time for breaking and entering, property damage, violating a court order and threatening harm. She didn't go quietly, but she did go. And that was the last time I saw her. 3 months later, she was convicted and sentenced to serve time. Not just for her crimes against me, but for past victims who finally came forward. Her unborn child, confirmed by DNA, was Jason's. But when she was incarcerated, she relinquished parental rights. Jason was given the choice: raise the baby or put her in care. He chose to raise her. On his own. And to my surprise, he named the baby after my mother, Grace. The first time I held her, she was wrapped in a yellow blanket, eyes blinking up at me like she had known me in another life. Jason sat beside me, quiet. "She'll never know lies," he said. "She'll never be used as a pawn. And she'll always know who her real grandmother is." I smiled, tears dripping down my cheeks and onto Grace's soft hair. "I believe you," I said. "But not because you promised, because now I see the man I raised." Lorraine eventually moved back to her house, though she still calls every morning at 7 a.m. sharp. Jason comes by often, with Grace in one arm and groceries in the other. The community still sends letters. I get cookies, poems, drawings from little kids who say, "My mommy read me your story." Mara helped me write a short memoir. Cassidy's report was nominated for a regional award. Elaine even started volunteering at a women's shelter. The scars are still there, visible and invisible, but they remind me of something powerful. I survived. They tried to take everything from me, my dignity, my home, my story. But they forgot one thing. I wasn't just a mother. I was a woman who remembered who she was. And that saved me. So if you've ever felt forgotten, if someone told you your time had passed, if you gave everything to someone who threw you away, hear me now. You're not too old. You're not too late. You're not done. Because strength doesn't scream. It whispers through survival. And I'm still here. So is Grace. And we're both starting over. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe. Because somewhere out there, another woman is fighting for her voice. And she needs to hear this one. Your story isn't over either. Let's keep telling it. Eleanor, 76, proud grandmother, survivor, and still standing.